All right, Calvary family, welcome to a new week, a new month, and a new year. I love this time of year because we always look forward to the big things that are hopeful expectations, that things are going to be better in this new year. Just think of all the things that we can accomplish in this new year. I mean, think about it. We've already began the service with believers' baptism. What a better way to start a church service in a new year. But wait a minute. Isn't this how just about every sermon begins in January? Maybe not with the believer's baptism, but don't they always begin, all this hopeful, everything is great, everything looks perfect? And I'm not saying that it isn't true, but isn't it kind of become a little cliche, I guess? Isn't that the way we're supposed to feel about a new year and a new stage in life? But sometimes it's hard to get that fresh start when you're looking backwards. I mean, today we're talking about dealing with discouragement. And just to clarify, the definition of the word discouragement that we're going to use today is a loss of confidence or enthusiasm. We look backwards to some of the stuff that's happened and we see discouragement. I mean, this is the beginning of a new year. We should be looking forward with enthusiasm, with confidence, yet we look backwards and we get discouraged. I think, everything that's happened these last couple years. Think of January 2020. I heard so many people beginning their, year saying, this is the year of vision. I mean, 2020, that's what it was, right? Perfect vision. And it was all about the possibilities. The future looked bright. It was a new decade. And then by March, everything is shut down. COVID comes in and just changes everything. Calvary and every other church across this nation was scrambling, trying to find some kind of new normalcy to keep things moving. It was a rough year for us all, and I get it. That was a very discouraging thing. January 2021 wasn't, it was, what might not have been such super positive messages, but we still began by discussing the possibilities for us that year. We were still looking for the positive and all that. The previous year was hard, 2020 was hard, but hopefully 2021 was not going to be as bad. But if we remember back to January 2021, things seemed still so uncertain. We were having these ups and downs of COVID. A lot of stuff going on within the nation. It was questionable what's going to happen in 2021. I even remember, Thursday this week, I was watching the news, and it wasn't much better because the title of the segment they were doing was The Worst of 2021. That we didn't even want to look at the positive, it was just the worst. And that's discouraging. Even here within Calvary, when we start opening things up again, we start doing our Wednesday night meals, our groups start growing again on Wednesday nights. And then our leader says, it's time for me to go. Sonny announced that he was retiring. It was time to hang up the hat, call it a day, and that was a discouraging blow to Calvary. Now we're at this point that we're searching for new leadership to fill the gap left by Sonny. And as he said several times, and as Susie will definitely remind us, you're never going to find another Sonny Harvison. When Susie says, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but we'll never find another Sonny Harvison to be our leader again. And quick disclaimer here, while this is discouraging for Calvary, I recognize the fact that Sonny and Susie need this. They have worked so hard for so long. He deserves this. He's earned this. He needs to enjoy his retirement and get some of that much needed relax that he's worked for. But I get it. This is discouraging. We have these questions such as, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? Will things ever be the same again? And it's okay to be discouraged. Discouragement is an emotion that God allows us to feel. It serves a purpose in our faith to move us into a new area. But it's not okay for us to stay discouraged forever. God never intended for that. He wants us to move to new areas and do new things, or even allow Him to do new things within us. But sometimes we lose all that confidence, all that enthusiasm. But that's because we're focusing on the wrong thing. So the good news about discouragement is you're not alone in your discouragement. If we look through the Bible, we realize we're in good company. There are so many people in Scripture who face discouragement. We can go all the way back to the very beginning. Think of how Adam must have felt when he took a bite of that fruit and he realized what he did. I think that would have been discouraging. What about Moses? As God sends him out there saying, "You're going to lead my people to freedom." And yet the Israelites constantly fight and bicker and even tell him, "It would have been better for us if you left us alone in Egypt." I'm sure Moses was discouraged. Think about Abraham. You're going to have this promised son. You'll be the father of a mighty nation, and you will be my chosen people. And he gets to this old age. He's in this old age. He's like, how am I going to have a child? I'm sure that was discouraging. Fast forward to the New Testament. Even think about the disciples. As Jesus was proclaiming and he was going and people were believing, then they would meet some people who weren't. Some people who completely rejected Jesus. Some of the disciples says, "Jesus, just call down fire from heaven and have these people destroyed." Jesus says, "No." I think the disciples probably felt discouraged in some of that stuff too. And then even Jesus would have felt the discouragement, like, my disciples don't get it. I've been telling them this stuff for years and they still don't get it. Discouragement is nothing new to us. We're in good company. It's throughout the entirety of Scripture. But the one we're going to look at here today, the one whose discouragement we're going to look at here today, is King David. I mean, think about it. We got all these stories of people writing about these characters who were discouraged. We even got these stories of King David and the discouragement he must have felt. But with David, we get something a little bit deeper. We get Psalms. And we get his laments and his cries for help in those Psalms. David was willing to take the time to write out his feelings, his emotions, his discouragement, and sing it to God. And we get the joy of reading that and seeing that we're not alone in our discouragement. It's been preserved for us so we can see the exact emotion this great king felt. It's one thing to be able to read these stories about our biblical heroes and hear the discouragement they felt. We know David's story. He was this lowly little shepherd boy, the last son of Jesse. And his dad wouldn't even bring him into the house when Samuel the prophet came, said, "I've come to anoint a new king." They don't even consider David as an option for that. Then it was the battle between the Israelites and the Philistines where Goliath stood up and said, "I challenge y'all, send your best warrior out." And we see the entire army of Israel shaking in their boots, saying, "We can't do this." Then this little boy, David, goes up and he's just trying to question things that were happening. What's going on? And we see his brother say, "You've got no business being here. You can do absolutely nothing here. Get out of here and go home." And we see that, through that one experience, he actually earns national recognition. Next thing you know, he is in the courts of King Saul, serving the king. He knows what God has coming next for him. He knows he should be the one on the throne by God's words. Yet Saul is still there. And then we see all of a sudden Saul's attitude toward David flips. Saul picks up that spear and throws it right at David's head and luckily misses. How discouraging would that be? Having the person you're supposed to be replacing throwing spears at your head. He intended for David to die. And David will spend the next several years on the run from King Saul, moving from cave to cave and hiding in the wilderness before he would finally see God's promise fulfilled, that he would be king. That would definitely be a discouraging time. It's one thing to hear all these stories about him, but it's another thing to hear the thoughts and emotions that David felt during all this. While he was stuck in those caves, David penned several psalms. One of them we're going to look at today is Psalms 142. In this psalm, he laments over his discouragement, and he tells God exactly what he is feeling and thinking about this situation. So follow along with me. Psalm 142. I cry aloud to the Lord. I plead aloud to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaint before him. I reveal my trouble to him. Although my spirit is weak within me, you know my way. Along this path I travel. They have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see, no one stands up for me. There is no refuge for me. No one cares about me. I cry to you, Lord. I say, you are my shelter, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am very weak. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Free me from prison so that I can praise your name. The righteous will gather around me because you deal generously with me. May the Lord bless the reading of his word. May your souls be nourished by his word. We see as David's running from cave to cave, hiding, trying to preserve his life from King Saul. He's discouraged. He's like, I got nowhere else to go. I've got nothing else I can do. Lord, I can't do a thing, but I know that you can and you will. In this psalm, we see David's cry for help. You know, this isn't a simple prayer saying, God, if you would do this thing for me, it would be better. I feel a little bit better about my life. Or God, I would like for this to possibly happen, but I'm okay if it doesn't. You know, this is a cry from the depths of his soul. This is an unmuted, out loud plea for mercy from his enemies. This is an I'm holding nothing back cry. And I'm pouring out my soul to you for help cry. There's no, maybe I need your help. This is, God, I need you. I've got nothing else to do. There's nothing else I can do. David recognizes there is nowhere else he can go for help. His discouragement has gotten to him, and he realizes all I can do is I can take this to God. I've got nothing else. There's nothing at this point. There's nothing else I can do. It's my cry to God. We also see in this passage David's collapse. All those friends and allies that David thought he had were almost gone. You know, there were the chance of Saul has killed his hundreds, David has killed his tens of thousands. And I might have quoted that wrong, so please don't be upset with me on that one. But David had the nation of Israel was cheering for him. This is our hero. Now all of a sudden the nation of Israel is coming after him. David's got a few mighty men who stand beside him, ready to fight. But everybody else is gone. You know, he could think about this nice life that he thought he had. He was supposed to be the king of Israel. Yet he's running from this king who's trying to kill him. You know, it would be nice, if he had this life, as a king. But now that life as a king is out of sight at this point. It'd be nice if he still had that no-pressure life as this shepherd boy on his dad's farm. But those days are long gone. In his discouragement, he tells God he has nowhere else to go. He says, my enemies have set traps for me. There is no hope for him except in what God can give him. And then at the end of this passage, we see David's confidence come through. He cries out, "You are my hope. You are my portion." He's saying, "I can't do this, but I know you can." He says, "If you've called me to be king, I know you will bring me out of this." He says, "And I know you can bring me out of this prison that I'm stuck in." And David was stuck in a prison. He was trapped in these caves as his hiding place. If he came out for too long, if too many people saw him, Saul and his men would have dealt with him and killed him. He was trapped physically. He was also trapped mentally. He had no idea what he could do to make things better. David was at rock bottom, but praise God, he knew the one who could save him. David did what he needed to do to overcome his discouragement. We know that he didn't stay in the caves. He wasn't in that spot forever. God did deliver him as David requested of him. He eventually would become king, and he would see God's promise fulfilled. He could look forward instead of looking backwards. But maybe we still need some help with learning how to deal with discouragement that we're still experiencing here today. And this really, what I'm going to present y'all, it could be any kind of discouragement you're dealing with. It could be discouragement at home. It could be discouragement on the job. It could just be, I don't know what to do. I don't really know how to grow. I don't know how to make things better in this new year. But the first thing we need to do is recognize what this discouragement is really doing to us. We got to deal with the discouragement. First thing it is discouragement changes our view of ourselves and our future. You know, I heard the story about this man. His name was John Burns. He lived in the Queens back in the late 1990s. John Burns had, in this article that I read, it called him, he was a welder by trade. And the article about him, it didn't mention what happened, but somehow or another, John made a few bad decisions, and he was now homeless in Queens. And he even said that he was living in a park in New York. Then one fateful day, September 1997, John is walking through this area, and he comes across a burning 2-story house. From the second window, he sees this mom who is, head out the window, crying for help. She has a young son with her. It was a 2-year-old boy, and they were trapped by the flames. They had no escape. John calls out to the woman and says, "Just drop him down to me." And John catches this 27-pound 2-year-old boy in his arms. Later in the article, it says the fireman said, "We, of course, would have used a ladder, but John did the right thing." When the boy got to the hospital upon examination by a pediatrician, he says there was no harm. This boy is perfectly fine. John saved him. After John had the little boy in a safe place, he came back, and this time he now has somebody who had a ladder with him. They put the ladder up and they saved Sonia, the mother. And she would go to the hospital and she would be treated for smoke inhalation, but she made a full recovery and was released later that day. Sonia, her son Justin, and her husband Stephen praised John Byrne for his heroism, and so did the firemen and the medical staff. To them, John was this hero. He saved the day. But because of his past, because he was looking backwards, because of his discouragement, John didn't see it that way. In an interview about the experience, John Byrne said this: "I ain't no hero. I'm a drunken bum, and I live in a little park." Because of his discouragement, he's like, "I'm not a hero. I'm a bum. I'm a homeless guy. I live in a park." He was looking backwards at where he had been. He didn't look and see what he had done, what he had accomplished. He could not see himself as a hero because of the discouragement in his life. But John was able to step up, and he was to be that hero when he needed to be. He saved 2 lives that day. But because of his past discouragement, it had changed the way he viewed himself. It changed the way he viewed his future. Has any of this discouragement you've experienced, has it changed the way you look at yourself? Has it changed the way you view what the future holds for you? Is it, I can't do that because this is who I am. This is who I am because of the past. Well, we have a God who changes things. And we have a God who wants to come and change things for us. Discouragement also makes us vulnerable to temptation. The Bible tells us that we have an enemy who comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. We have an enemy who wants to do whatever it takes to tear us down. When he sees us as a threat to him and his goals, which is what we are as believers, we live for the purpose that God has given us. Satan sees us as a threat, and he comes at us with all that he has. You know, Crystal, I've talked to you about this. Today you fall in believer's baptism. Welcome to the family of God. But you now have an enemy who's going to come at you with everything he's got, trying to tear you down. But we have a God who is greater and willing to fight for us. But we have this enemy who's going to size us up, who's going to see our weaknesses, and he's going to try to take us out of the fight. If he can discourage us to think that we can't do anything, then we won't do anything. It makes us vulnerable to temptation. Maybe you've said something to yourself like this before. My beet and prune juice and tree bark cereal diet just isn't cutting it. I haven't even lost a pound. So you go and eat a whole box of Krispy Kreme donuts. Maybe it's, I feel so down right now, I just need something to pick me up. So you go to an inappropriate website. How about, I can't stand what I'm going through. I am so mad right now. Then you hit your spouse, kick your cat, and or punch your fist through a wall. Because of the discouragement, we become vulnerable to temptation. When we are discouraged, we find it easier to say those 4 destructive words. I might as well. When we get discouraged, it's easier for us to give in and give up. And when we give in and we give up, we make ourselves even more frustrated, even more discouraged. And then the cycle continues over and over again till things are spiraling out of control and we have no idea how to get back to where we want to be. Discouragement does that to us. It changes our view of ourselves and our future, and it makes us vulnerable to temptation. So like David did, we need to figure out how to deal with our discouragement head on. And I'm going to give you all 5 things that we need to do to deal with discouragement. Number 1, don't mask it. Have you ever met that person that you know that something's going on in their lives and they have to be discouraged, yet they act so super happy about everything? They come into a room with this glowing smile, hiding the pain that's underneath. They walk in, you see them take a deep breath, and then it seems to be rainbows and sunshine in their life. It's a beautiful day, everything is cheery, I love everyone, I am the inspiration to Mr. Rogers. My smile could bring peace to the Middle East. If those insurgents and terrorists would just look at me, they would start singing, God is so good, and drop their weapons. If that's you, stop it. Just please stop. You're not doing yourself or anyone else any good pretending that discouragement doesn't happen to you. You can't mask it, you can't hide it or ignore it. When you try, you just drive yourself deeper down into the discouragement you're experiencing. When you try to mask it, you cheat yourself of what God's trying to do in your life to deal with the discouragement. So just stop. Stop it. Don't mask it. Don't hide it. Let God do His work in your discouragement so that you can get to the point that you cry aloud to God for healing and guidance in your discouragement. Point number 2, and this one I feel like I'm preaching to myself. Schedule your leisure time. I really am preaching to myself on this one, and Tammy will verify this. I have a tendency to keep working to get as much stuff done as I can to kind of drown out some of that discouragement that I get sometimes. When I get stressed out, I will start doing even more stuff to kind of keep myself busy so I'm not thinking about it. I push myself even harder to try to make everything right by my own hard work in order for the stress to go away, but all that really does is create even more stress. Maybe y'all can relate with me on that one, I don't know. But guess what? It doesn't work. I have been told countless times and times again to slow down and to take a rest. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure someone else here relates to me. I hope so. But this is actually even a biblical thing. God told us to stop and take a rest. He said that we would need a Sabbath day for rest each week. And I really don't think I'm the only one he meant that for, because he put it in the Bible all that time ago for us. So if you're like me in this sense, maybe sometimes you actually got to schedule your leisure time. Otherwise, if you don't schedule it, all those other things that you think you got to do are going to fight for your attention. And they're always going to win out. But if you like schedules and you like plans like I do, make sure you schedule that time to rest and you don't let anything take that away from you. Number 3, practice encouragement. Proverbs 11:25 says, "A generous person will be enriched, and the one who gives a drink of water will receive water." In other words, those who give are going to receive. If you struggle with discouragement, give encouragement to others. Then eventually you're going to receive encouragement back. I mean, think about it. The Bible also tells us that it is not what goes into us that defiles us, but it's what comes out of the heart. And the reverse is true as well. What comes in doesn't always purify us, but what comes out is what makes us clean. We let these positive things come in, positive things are going to come out. The positive things don't make us clean, but when we allow them to shape our heart and we begin seeing things differently, then positive things will come out. If you want to see things in a more positive light, then say more positive things to those around you. If you look for beauty, that's what you're going to see. Practice encouragement. That way you get around this whole discouragement you're experiencing. You see things differently. Another way to do this is, if anybody ever writes you anything encouraging, save it. And when you get that discouragement, go back to those things and read them again. I carry around this bag. It has some of my books, my laptop, all that stuff in it. I call it my office bag. In the back pouch of that office bag, I have a pretty decent thick stack of cards of encouragement that people have written me over the years. You know, some of these have come through times when I was actually facing discouragement. It's become times when ministries were ending and transitions were happening. Or it'd be times when students would just write me these wonderful words of encouragement. I save all those. And sometimes when I get so discouraged, I go back to those and I read them again. They come from churches and students I've worked with in the past. These words, they're just words of encouragement. When discouragement gets the better of me, I go back and I see the impact God has had on those lives through me. And I'm encouraged again. My suggestion is to try both of those. Give words of encouragement to those around you, and you're going to get it back. When discouragement happens, look back at the encouragement that you've received in the past. If you want to defeat discouragement, practice encouragement. We can also pray about the discouragement that we're experiencing. We looked at Psalms 142. Isn't that exactly what David was doing? We call it a psalm, but that was his prayer from the depths of his heart. And when we pray, we change the way we look at things. In Matthew 5:44, Jesus says, "Pray for those who persecute you." That's easy, right? For everybody who hates you, just pray for them. It's not. Pray for those who do bad things to you. But Jesus, don't you know what he did to me? How can you tell me to pray for those who persecute me? Don't you know the things that he said to me? Of course he does. The Bible also tells us that no one can do more evil to us than what has been done to him. But Jesus still says, pray for them. I know it's not easy. I know. I get that. But we got to put that practice into our prayer life. Those things that are discouraging us, those people who are discouraging us, pray for them. You begin seeing them in a different light. Those situations that discourage us, say, God, I don't know how to deal with this. Pray for it, and you'll see it in a whole new light. I do this, and it helps me see things. It helps me see people. It helps me see situations the way that God sees them. This prayer for these things and people that discourage me, it gets my heart in line with God's heart for them. It helps me turn from the bitterness that I could be feeling toward them. And it turns my heart away from that bitterness that could be destroying the things in my life, the good things that God is doing. We need to pray for our source of discouragement. And last one is we need to change our focus. So often when we get stuck in this discouragement, we've got this me focus. How could this be happening to me? My life is so hard. This, what's going on to me is so horrible. You get that it's me. Discouragement changes the focus to me, to ourselves. We change our focus to God, and things are going to be completely different. I was talking to a student this week, and he was talking about how he realizes part of the problem in his life is he wants control over everything in his life. And I'll tell you all the same thing I told him is we don't have control. We might want to think we've got control. We've got no control. We cannot control other people. And a lot of the time, we can't even control our own lives. But that control is us putting the focus back on ourselves. We realize we want to control things, but when we change the focus from ourselves to God, we realize we've got no control. But when we change our focus to God, we realize He is the one who has all control. And He is the one who can do a lot better than we can with it. If we want to deal with our discouragement, we need to fix our eyes upon Jesus, the perfecter of our faith. We need to step out of the way and let God do His thing. Just like we read, David in that cave, you are my shelter, you are my portion. You can rescue me, my strength comes from you. You can free me from this prison that I'm stuck in. We need to change our focus from ourselves to our God. Doug Fields writes in one of his books, in light of eternity, the people I let down or who let me down, those are just windows for God's grace to shine. In light of eternity, I'm a child of the Creator of the universe. He knitted me in my mother's womb, and He knows my name and totally loves me. When our focus becomes eternal, discouragement can become the seedbed for a harvest of spiritual renewal and a launch pad for a fresh start. So right now, are you dealing with discouragement? Have you been looking backwards for too long and you can't see the possibilities of the future? Or are you looking in the right place for encouragement? God will allow us to experience discouragement so we will depend on Him to pull us out of the discouragement we get stuck in. But we can only get to that point if we know Him personally. Do you? Do you have this personal relationship with our Savior that you know you can turn to Him for everything that you need? Have you given Him everything so that He can rescue you not just from the discouragement, but from the sin that you are stuck in? There is no other hope we have in this world apart from what Christ did for us. We're the ones who mess things up. We're the ones who are guilty of the sin. We're the ones who have created this divide between us and the God who created us and loves us. It was our own mess. And if you try to clean it up on your own, you're only going to get more discouragement out of it. In fact, as the Bible even tells us, we can never clean it up on our own. The Bible tells us that we are unable to pay the debt of sin, but in His great love for us, Jesus, the one who had all that control, the one who could take care of everything, He took the punishment for us. He died for us, and then He rose from the dead to bring us back into a relationship with the Father. No matter what discouragement you may be facing right now, you cannot get over that apart from His grace and His mercy. So as our worship team comes back up here, if you have not made that decision today, what are you waiting for? Change your focus from, I've got all the answers, I can do this myself, to saying, God, I realize I've got no control. Change your focus from yourself to God and let Him help you with that struggle today. If you've already asked Him, are you still clinging to that idea that you have control? What discouragement are you carrying right now? I challenge you, come lay it here at the altar and say, God, I give it up to you. You are my portion. You are my strength. Free me from this prison. Let's stand for this time of invitation. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.